Welcome to Independent Comics for Every Reader, presented by Library Pass and Comics Plus. My name is Gila Charles Gonzalez. I'm the Chief Content Officer for Library Pass and the moderator for today's session. I'm excited to be joined by some of our publisher partners to spotlight some of their great titles for readers of all ages and interests. Barbara Dillon is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Fanbase Press, an Eisner and Harvey Awards-nominated publishing company and geek media outlet that seeks to produce new and distinctive works that give voice to the themes, ideals, and people that make geekdom so exceptional. Amy Jackson is an associate editor at ABLAZE, a publishing company releasing a variety of titles in different formats, genres, and age ranges, original material, crowd-funded titles, reprints, art books, including international titles from Europe, Asia, webtoons, and more. Angus Ewan-Killick is a 30-year veteran of children's publishing. His roles have included VP of Marketing at Penguin Young Readers, Global Director of Marketing at Disney Publishing Worldwide, and Associate Publisher at Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. In 2020, he founded Red Comet Press, an independent children's publishing company that embraces visual storytelling across age groups and genres, including some select graphic novel content. Also, feel free to share your questions, comments, and insights using the hashtag #ReadAllTheComics on your favorite social network. Today's webinar is presented by Library Pass. We curate high-interest, immersive digital content that helps libraries and schools expand their reach and engagement without breaking their materials budget. Our Comics Plus platform offers unlimited, simultaneous access to thousands of digital comics, graphic novels, and manga in collections curated for elementary, middle, and high school readers. We also offer a complete collection, including thousands of additional titles for older readers to public and academic libraries. Learn more and sign up for a free demo account at comicsplusapp.com. And now, enjoy today's session. So before we jump in, I want a slightly better introduction to each of you before we jump into the presentations from each of your publishers. So starting on my screen, and I guess the order will go in for clockwise. Amy, tell us a little bit about yourself, your connection to comics, and why you love them, I hope.
I do love them. I've just sort of always read comics. I used to get like Disney Adventures magazine, and that had like Bone and Donald Duck and such in it. I think I started buying local comic shop when I was in high school. Kind of progressed at my college library. I sort of learned, there's more to comics than superhero floppies, excluding like manga and stuff I used to read, because that was also a big thing in like middle and high school for me. But I got like Strangers in Paradise from my college library, and that was like a big formative moment for me. Didn't work in comics for a while, taught overseas, did some other stuff in my adult life, came back, went to the Kubert School, have a background in like my initial major in college was English. So a combination of like English major, organized person, comic books. Now I'm an editor. So it all worked out in the end, and I help make comics.
Awesome. That is a great trajectory. All right, Barbara, tell us a little about you.
Absolutely. Hi, Guy. Thanks for having me today. I, like Amy, have been a huge fan of comics for a long time. The form of those comics and the genres have changed and shifted over time, but I came to work more collaboratively with libraries, honestly, just at the start of the pandemic. I became a member of the American Library Association's Graphic Novel and Comics Roundtable, which I've been an active member of ever since, and simply adore all of the work that has been done under the presidents of Matthew No, Moni Barrett. They've been doing fantastic work, especially as of late with the challenges that a lot of librarians are facing, the censorship, and just all of the really challenging work, honestly, that our librarians all across the country are doing. So a huge thank you to all of our librarians watching. Yeah, for me, I just love comics. I love being able to provide a platform and a spotlight for creators, especially marginalized creators and voices that we don't generally see through a lot of other publishers. So I'm very honored to be able to have that opportunity and to provide that platform.
Awesome. Angus?
Yeah, sure. So as you can tell, I grew up in the UK, and my initiation into comics probably started with my dad, who every Friday would bring home a comic for each of us, myself and my two sisters. And as I recall, and this is really going to date me, I think, the Beano, Whizzer and Chips, and Dandy. I think Dandy's probably the most old-fashioned of those. And then I do recall at some point he came home with a brand new series comic, and that was 2000 AD. And he brought the first issue when it first launched and continued to buy that for me for, I can't recall how many years, but I had a collection of every issue. And please don't ask me what happened to it, because I can tell you, probably ended up in the trash. One of those moves, you know, and if I had those today, I certainly wouldn't be talking to you guys right now, would I? I'd be at the auction house making lots of money. And of course, every year in the UK and in Europe, there's a tradition of giving annuals that are based off of those comics. So you'd get the Beano annual, or you'd get the Dandy annual. So that was something we would get at Christmas time, which was great. And sort of my career, I've woven in and out of comic book stroke graphic novel publishing, working obviously at Disney. We did a lot, and Disney Adventures, very close to my heart, Amy. Loved that publication, sadly no more. And then at Macmillan, I was very fortunate to oversee one of the imprints, which is the groundbreaking graphic novel imprint, First Second, which operates very much as a sort of independently within the children's publishing group and does some adult publishing as well. And, you know, gave me exposure to some incredible creators, including, you know, Mariko and Gillian Tamaki, who won the Caldecott and a Prince honor with their book this one summer, and Jean Lewin Yang and Cory Doctorow, people like Paul Pope, and even Scott McCloud, who did a book with us, which was pretty amazing. And so I do continue to watch and monitor everything that First Second does a little bit from a distance, but my heart is very much in that category of publishing, and I'm very proud to be able to introduce some comic book graphic novels onto my list as part of the offering that Red Comet Press has.
Awesome. All right. So to set the context for today's session, we're specifically focusing on indie publishers, which has a different connotation depending on which segment of the publishing industry you're in. Comics is particularly unique relative to the broader industry. Sometimes indie publishing has become synonymous with self-publishing and individual authors. So in this context, what we're defining as independent publishing is basically independent of some larger corporate entity where you both have the editorial freedom and possibly much more strict financial constraints when it comes to how and what you publish. And potentially, I know for a fact, in libraries, challenges sometimes in availability, whether physical or digital. So from that perspective, our guests today all represent independent publishers who work with us on Comics Plus, but whose books are also available in other channels. And so what we've asked them to do is to come and talk to you and us about some of the great books that they have available that they're excited about, and to share them with us so we can learn more about them and then recommend them to readers and devour them and help them circulate in libraries across the US and beyond, because Comics Plus is international.
This you already read when you did the introduction. Publishing company releasing a variety of titles. A lot of what we do is Euro comics right now, manga, manhwa, North American English release. So that's pretty simple. The first title I'm going to talk about is Animal Castle. Volume 1 is currently out. We're in the midst of publishing Volume 2. So there's very beautifully illustrated. It was nominated for an Eisner twice, Best Limited Series, and then Felix Delep, the artist, was nominated for Best Painter and Multimedia Artist. The whole thing is painted. So it's very, very beautiful. Not too long, the first volume, and it is a bunch of animals living on a farm. There are no people on the farm. and the animals have formed a government. Particularly the bull has formed like a dictatorship. So it's about nonviolent resistance to totalitarianism, but animals. I don't have too much to say about that. It's very beautiful. I have a few little sample pages that are probably going to look very small to everybody. But the main character is this cat. And they're sort of made to do manual labor on the farm, so the bull can make trades for goods with a human. There's a human that comes with a cart that trades with the bull, so that's kind of weird, but I don't question it. You don't question it, it's good. The animals are talking. There's a rat that comes and starts teaching them about, again, nonviolent resistance. So it's a bit political in that sense. It is talking animals, but it's not really a children's book. I don't know if librarians want a heads up about that. There's nothing like horrible in it. Some sexual talk. There's a rabbit gigolo. I feel like when I say things, it sounds like a very unserious book. But one of the characters is a sex worker rabbit, and you know, totalitarianism. That's scary. So there you go, Animal Castle. Please look at it. It's beautiful. Another one of our titles is The Breaker. This is one of our very popular titles. It is a Korean manhwa by Jung Guk-jin and Park Jin Hwan, who is also working under the pen name Kamara, which I didn't realize until I was making this slide, because he's credited one way on volume 1 and then under his real name on the remaining volumes. But this is like a martial arts kind of shonen fighting comic. The main character is a high school student who's bullied quite badly, and he meets a martial artist and becomes his student. It gets to an exaggerated point, as most comics of the genre do, where it sort of becomes mystical and unrealistic. This one gets into like there's different crime families that harness different forms of martial arts, and how this student navigates that world. So that's pretty, I don't want to call it typical, but fighting manga is very, very popular, and it's one of those. If you're into that, go for it. Good, it's fun. Some examples of the art, keeping the Korean sound effects in there. Just a little looky-loo. What's going on? This one maybe fits library theme because it's literary. Robert E. Howard. This is the Sumerian. The description for these all sort of the description that we have for these are like, it's uncensored, it's this, that, and the other. So again, not for kids.
It's in our adult collection.
Yeah. I was gonna be like, there's nothing too bad, but like the first volume I think is okay. The second volume is pushing it a little bit more. It's pulp. It's based on 70s pulp, so there's burly guys, Conan the Barbarian, doing very violent things with a sword, and then also meeting some fighty ladies and having a good time. Everybody's having fun. But yep, based on the works of Robert E. Howard, the volumes all have various artists. There's 2 stories in every volume, so each one has its own creative team. It is mature. I got some art from that one as well.
And these are new adaptations of the stories. These aren't reprints of the various other publishers who've had Conan in the past, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
So these are, yeah, English releases of newer stories. They also print the short stories in there. So you'll read the comic and then you'll get to, oh, this is the original short story. So if you want to do some compare and contrasting about the art of adapting works for comics, that's a cool little extra.
Huh.
And I really like the art in them. Various art styles. So this is, again, is just some sample pages. Getting into our more children-oriented young adult. L's is 12 to 17 years. I would call it, yeah, probably like a young adult or like a young reader. I'm not the most familiar with all of the very structured categories for audiences.
We consider it teen on our platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, teen works. There is some
popular.
like we did mention before, like all the censorship and stuff that libraries are dealing with. There are some very, very minor, like Elle as a teenager recognizing her sexuality. So that would be like the only thing I would consider for like very young children. But very gorgeous. The art is described as sort of Disney Pixar-esque. It's about a girl, Elle, who transfers to a new school, and it turns out that she has sort of various personalities. Why is revealed later in the volumes, but each one is represented by like a different hair color, and she's got one that's like super into pranks, and then one that's very athletic, one that's super shy, and she's meeting her new friends, and it's sort of, she flops in between these personalities, and how she deals with that, why she is this way, what kind of trouble it causes, stuff that she's dealing with. It's sort of about like personal conflict, inner conflict. So that's quite good and quite gorgeous. So we've got the first volume out now. There's going to be 3 volumes total. They're very nice. And then another one, and this I will say is one of the titles that when I encountered it, I was like, wow, I am an old person. Because they're like, it's Minecraft. And I'm like, okay, I know what Minecraft is, cool. And then they're like, it's Freegil, this YouTuber. And I've never heard of that. I've heard of YouTube. I haven't heard of this gentleman. And I think he's also based in France. So maybe that's why. I'm not sure what a Mr. Beast is. I'm getting there. But this is a very famous French Minecraft streamer who now has a comic adaptation. I guess not of anything he's done, because I don't know if that makes sense. But it's Minecraft. Everything is blocks. And it's about Freegil, who is a wizard in this world, and he's got a dog named Fluffy, and they have various sort of silly adventures based in the world of Minecraft, which children love. And this one is 9 to 12 years recommended age. Pretty easy. He's got a friend who builds things. He's got a friend who's like a thief, but also a good guy. They solve problems about like missing watermelons and nice things. And I learned a little bit about Minecraft lore while I was reading. I'm not sure how much of that is accurate to the lore of the game, but I'm learning. I can learn something. Yeah. And then there's the art.
Series is also really popular with us. Everything Minecraft related gets devoured.
Yeah, I like didn't realize the full scope of Minecraft, which I really kind of should have. I used to teach. I taught English in Korea for a while, and my kindergarten aged Korean students would be like, Minecraft. I love Minecraft. So I should have known that this is an insane phenomenon.
Excellent, thanks. And Amy, those titles are fantastic. So thank you for all of that. Thank you, Guy. So yes, we are Fanbase Press. I'm going to, it's allowing me to move. There we go. So again, this is just a little bit about us. We operate both as a dual publisher and geek media outlet, because our mission is that even though we are a small boutique publishing company, we're only able to take on so many titles at a time. But our mission is to still spotlight and raise up the voices of as many people as we can. So whether that be through publishing or through the daily reviews, interviews, and entire podcast network that we have, we just want to highlight as many voices and stories as we can. So some of the stories that we publish are Kinsei. So this is Kinsei, the complete series, which is an Eisner nominee from 2018. This is a series about a young woman who gets superpowers on her quinceañera, but only for the year that she's 15. and they go away, they disappear. This was nominated for the digital comic category, which is appropriate because in 2017, when we initially released the series, we did so bilingually in both English and Spanish. So this book that you see here is the collected edition in English, but the Spanish is also available. Before moving on and highlighting that bilingual aspect, once again, I'll note that this is appropriate, I would say, for ages 11 and up. It is very much a superhero story, very much coming of age. I'll show you some of the artwork from it. Really fantastic artwork by Emma Steinkellner, who folks may know also from her wonderful series, The OK Witch. But going back to that Spanish language or bilingual sense, we also in 2020 put out a hardcover edition called Quince, the Definitive Bilingual Edition. And if you ever see the printed edition, it's ultimately a flip book. So on one side, it's completely enlarged from the original edition. It also has forewords, study guides, essays, an art gallery by all Latinx or Latine creators. And then if you flip the entire book over, it's the same thing on the other side, but all in Spanish. So the bilingual edition is also available on Library Pass and Comics Plus. Highly recommend it. It's a fantastic story. It's very uplifting and has wonderful themes in addition to, the coming of age, but it's got very much a story of female empowerment, body positivity, and just a really fun story as well.
Just want to add this, since we added it to our platform, has consistently been one of the best circulating titles, and it's not attached to some well-established franchise. It's not some big well-known IP. It's not some big well-known creator. It's just a really impressive story, and the bilingual edition circulates better than the English edition. So any librarians listening wondering, I don't know if I have the audience for this, trust me, you do. And it's a really good example of where digital access can help you identify books that should also be on your physical shelves that may have been under your radar to begin with. This one has excited us from the beginning.
Thank you so much for that. And yes, it's wonderful for, I would say, both struggling readers and with reading comprehension, especially those who may have English as a second language, because of that ability to flip back and forth between the English and Spanish. So wonderful in that sense as well. And I have some more artwork to show just of Lupe, the main character, in her superhero costume. She refers to herself as Q, and with some of her friends. And the other thing I'll note about this story, I know in a lot of superhero stories, especially the modern ones, the superhero or their origin story comes from a very negative place, perhaps from loss. In our story, that is 100% not the case. She's a very positive, supportive family who, even after learning that she is a superhero, is behind her 1,000%. So very exciting in that aspect as well. All right, so moving on to Ripple Effects. This is also an Eisner and Harvey Award nominee from this year. And this series explores life as a superhero with an invisible illness. So the writer and creator, Jordan Hart, has an invisible illness called thrombophilia, which is a blood clotting disease, and he has to take medicine every day to survive. So he wanted to bring this very personal story to life, and he collaborated with his best friend, who also has an invisible illness, which is type 1 diabetes. And they brought this story together of an individual who has type 1 diabetes and who also has superhero powers. And what makes this story unique is it's not about, learning that you have an invisible illness and that having to be the thing you overcome. It's really just an everyday story about someone who happens to have diabetes, and a very person-first narrative and positive example of what that life looks like when you also have superhero abilities. And what makes the series really unique is that after every chapter or issue of the story, we have an essay by another individual with an invisible illness. representing everything from diabetes to multiple sclerosis, paranoid schizophrenia, and they really their own lived experience to what happens in the story. So really fantastic. And Matthew No, librarian for Harvard Medical School, wrote the foreword to this collected edition as well. Age range, I would say probably 13 and up. There's very mild violence, but no bad language, sexuality, any themes like that. So wonderful story, I would say, for middle school and high school. And here is artwork. This is a very specific section of the book referring to his superhero origin story of how he actually came to have diabetes and what his life has been like since. Next up is actually our latest release. This is called Four Color Heroes by writer and artist Richard Fairgray. And this is a very unique story. It's actually set in New Zealand in 2004, excuse me, in high school. And that means that it was prior to the passing of the Civil Union Act in 2004, which allowed same-sex couples to enter into a civil union. Why this story is unique is it's about these two boys, Patrick and Oscar, who are from very different worlds. Patrick is and I'm doing air quotes for those who may not have visibility. He's from the wrong side of the tracks, and Oscar is starting his first time in public school. He's from a very religious background, not permitted to read comic books. They meet in detention, and Patrick says, I see you looking at these comics. You really want to read them. I will find a loophole in your inability to read them by describing them to you. So they have very challenging home lives, but they come together each month, and Patrick provides this opportunity for them to find some happiness in their lives, find some connection and sense of community as not yet identified LGBTQIA youth, to find that ability to have a sense of belonging and to find a community and to kind of tune out the outside worlds, to tune out their home lives, which may be very challenging to process right now. So they have this ability to come together every month and find happiness, find their own identity, and truly fall in love. I would say that this is for ages 13 and up, and it touches on superheroes, coming of age, and of course, LGBTQIA plus themes as well. And here is some artwork. I will also note, especially for the digital sense of this, because it is by a creator who he himself is from New Zealand, there is a digital translation of this in Te Reo Maori as well. So if there are any international readers or those US-based who may be Maori readers, this book is entirely available in Maori as well. Sorry about that. Next up, we have nuclear power, which is aging up a tiny bit. Nuclear power is an alternate history of the Cuban Missile Crisis. So what would have happened if the bomb had been dropped? And ultimately, we like to explain this as The Handmaid's Tale meets the X-Men. So you kind of get some of the themes there and why we have aged this up a bit. It does deal with things like reproductive rights, immigration, authoritarian governments. So there are some more mature themes, which is why we have aged it up a little bit. But it's it became a very prescient story. It came out in 2021, and as the creators were working on it, scarily prescient in a lot of the things that we were going through during those years. So, but a really fantastic story. It was actually the winner of the International Latino Book Awards in 2022, I believe was the year. So really fantastic, hard-hitting story. The artwork by Lin Yoshii is simply gorgeous. She really wanted to mimic the propaganda art style of that period as well. So you can see some of her artwork here. Really phenomenal. And that's me. Happy to answer any questions for anyone, but I'll pass things over to Angus. Let me share back control. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't have any books about authoritarianism, I'm afraid. I'm trying to think what theme can I carry through from the previous presenters. That's not one of them, unless we read between the lines on some of these kids' books. Anyway, Red Comet Press is a small independent publisher of children's books, 0 to 12, in a variety of categories. So we have board books for babies, we have middle grade novels, we have nonfiction, media tie-ins. You see Robin there. And we also have beginning readers and a number of novelty publications. So I left Macmillan in January of 2020, and foolishly or not, I'm not sure quite yet, I decided to start a new publishing company during the lockdown months of the summer of 2020. So we've actually been publishing books since September 21. So we're only a couple of years in, but we have about 35 titles and we are doing about 20 books a year. And in that time, you know, we've had a good proportion of books from overseas. I'm very passionate about books in translation, and you'll hear more about one of them in a minute. But we're also sort of transitioning to more and more original homegrown titles as well. So moving on, I want to introduce you to Really Bird, which is a homegrown project. It is written by Harriet Ziefert, and this is a beginning reader series for 5 to 7-year-olds. And while I worked at Disney, I worked pretty closely with Mo Willems on his Elephant and Piggy books, which might have sold a few copies over the last few years. And these books sort of take somewhat a cue from those. But they are more complex, both in the storytelling and also the amount of text, but they still have plenty of repetition. And as you can see, and if we move down, they're all told using speech bubbles, so in dialogue and in a cartoon style of art. And if you look carefully, you'll see each of the characters has a different colored speech bubble. So these books make really fantastic opportunity for readers theater with students, where they can all participate and play a different part. In this story, Really Bird's making lemonade with his friends, and there's a surprise at the end of the book because their lemonade is not yellow. Let's go to the next spread here. So the stories are all about this character, Really Bird, and he's named Really Bird not because he's just happy or sad or hungry, but because he's really happy, he's really sad, and he's really hungry. So just like a 7-year-old kid. And he lives in a city park with his group of friends, which include a cat, pup, a rabbit, squirrels, and various other animals. And every adventure, even going to the moon, takes place in the park. So when they go to the moon, they're actually in the play area, the playground area with the whatever they're called, the toys that you have in the playground area, and that's how they travel to the moon. So as you can see, there are some traditional full-page spreads, but also there's plenty of storytelling through comic book panels. And the stories are silly, hilarious, but at the heart, all of them have a theme of social and emotional learning, usually about problem solving or getting along or resolving issues and ultimately friendship. We started with 2 titles in spring 22, and we've been releasing one every season. So we have 2 seasons, so 2 a year, and we'll have 6 by spring 24, and there are at least 2 more already planned. And at the end of this one, as you see, there's a drawing cartooning activity that hopefully will inspire kids to make their own drawings of Really Bird, and perhaps pass on the cartooning bug to another generation. The characters here were created by Travis Foster, who is a cartoonist from Nashville, Tennessee. And our next series is Gustav and Henry. It's a graphic novel duology from 2 talented creators from Australia. Andy Matthews provides the scripts, and Peter Thomas created the artwork. They're a pair of comedians, literally, and when you read these books, it really shines through. Gustav is a pig, and Henry, short for Henrietta, is a dog. And they are 2 best friends, but Gustav is like a crazy daredevil character with little self-control. And the other character, Henry, is logical, pragmatic, and provides the perfect yin to Gustav's yang. And in classic graphic novel structure, each book has 3 stories, and the 3 stories are interconnected. So you can read through and pick up on themes and things that happen in each story, but they can also be read independently. which is great for those emerging readers who are exploring graphic novels, either reading through the images or through the text first. The books are 128 pages, and the storytelling is really about the adventures of this couple, and they're completely zany and super creative art. And as you can see, it's just really explodes off the page. And the use of two color is particularly effective. They're packed with jokes and visual humor. And as you see in this spread, onomatopoeia. And I think the design and layout is particularly accomplished for two, relative newbies to the genre. So I hope we see a lot more from them in the future. Albie on His Way. So at first blush, Albie on His Way appears to be just a straightforward picture book, but actually it's got a little secret inside of it. First of all, Jutta Bauer, she is a Hans Christian Andersen Award winner from Germany, and she is much loved in her native country, and she deserves to be better known here. And I put this in because of the unique storytelling device. The story is about this mouse, Albie, who is sent by his king to take a message to a neighboring kingdom. Albie, our protagonist, sets off along his way. The storytelling is very much reminiscent of William Steig. It's a tall tale. And as Albie travels along the way, Jutta Bauer introduces a black and white cartoon strip along the bottom of the page that you see here. And so it is showing what the king is doing while Albie is on his journey. And it is a truly brilliant device because pre-literate children with whom the book is most likely to be shared can read the pictures along the bottom of the page and tell the adult what's going on. So it begs to be discussed. And as you can see, and I've got to look carefully here, the king, obviously he's looking through the window during the day, and then he's walking his dog, and then he's having a glass of wine, probably, looking in the mirror, going for a horse ride, exercising. Uh-oh, dog dies. It's very sad. Let's see, I'm in another glass of wine, looking out the window at night. Oh, he's got a cat, making... let's see, buying some flowers. Looks like he's meeting his future wife, maybe the future queen. So kind of fun and entertaining, and a great way to engage young readers who, obviously will be interested in the story that's happening to Albie, but also can tell you what's going on in those little black and white comic strips. And when Albie arrives back home, with the king, the comic strip ends. And my last book I wanted to show you is 101 Ways to Read a Book. And it is by two preeminent and beloved children's book creators from France who are working together for the first time. They've both had quite a few books published in English and in the US as well, but never together. And this book is really a series of 101 cartoons with captions showing young people reading books in various situations. It's a catalog of reading positions for bibliophiles and for their friends. And what's so fun is to sort of identify yourself, what type of reader you are, and also what type of reader your friends are too, and the people you know. And so it's a great gift for the holidays, to give book lovers in your life. I had the distinct joy of team translating this book with a fellow translator, and we had most fun translating some of these captions that could not be translated literally. They just would not work. They were very French, or the references were just too obscure for English language. So it was a game, really, a wordplay game where we had to come up with different captions for them, but ones that really invoked the spirit of the original and the entire book. We really had to cut ourselves off because we had a Google Doc, and I'm on the East Coast and she's on the West Coast, and we just kept coming up with new ones and trying them out and testing little tweaks and what have you. And eventually the book actually had to go off to the printer. So it was like, please stop now. But the most satisfying and gratifying thing was we got a full blessing from the author himself, who absolutely loved the work that we did. So
excuse me. Thank you, each of you, for those walkthroughs. One comment about Red Comet. So Comics Plus, the plus in comics is up for debate, but one of the things we've been slowly growing our collection of early reader material that is not explicitly comics by traditional definitions, but as Angus just kind of demonstrated, comics adjacent, great for early readers. Red Comet is part of that expansion. And we're also working on expanding into picture books as well, which Red Comet would be a player in there as well. We've found in particular that for early readers, sharing Comics Plus on a screen, whether it's the smart board or a projected screen, helps and facilitates with those read-along activities, so that the book with the comic strip at the bottom, I think, is a really fascinating example of a book that would work really well in that context, beyond just the individual one-on-one with a young reader. So that's really cool. So a couple of things I want to talk about before we take some questions from the audience. Let's talk a little bit about, and so Angus, I couldn't remember when I had first heard of Red Comet, but when you talked about when you left Macmillan and the pandemic, I was like, oh, I remember seeing that announcement and being like, wow, that is bad timing. Talk a little bit about
you know, you say it's bad timing, but it's also good timing, because what else was I going to do? Sit on my hands, you know? And there was nowhere to go.
I mean, it seems like it worked well.
Incubate a publishing company, you know, where there are no distractions. Sorry,
So
what's your question?
Talk a little bit about, in this context of independent publishing, you have pretty unique perspective. You've worked at some of the biggest of the big five, you know, First, Second. I think no matter your definition of independent or not, I think First, Second tends to be a particularly beloved imprint, regardless of its parent company.
Yeah.
But what are some of the challenges you've seen in launching Red Comet as an independent publisher, reaching markets that maybe used to be super easy in the old days?
So I'll try to answer that as comprehensively as possible. Just to jump back to Macmillan for a second. Macmillan Children's Publishing Group is really a group of small boutique publishers that have been acquired over the years, and each imprint has its own sort of independent spirit. But it is nice to sort of have the support of the mothership, let's say. And while I was there as associate publisher, we incubated a number of new imprints and businesses. And we would give them 5 years to make a profit and come out of that incubation period where we were supporting them heavily. So really, starting my own publishing company, I took a cue from that knowledge and did the same thing with my own company. And we're 3 years in and headed in the right direction. Fingers crossed that I make the right publishing decisions. Of course, no one can predict the path of any title that you put out there. You know, you just have to make your best guesses. And we will have winners and losers along the way. I think one of the biggest challenges is getting people to know your name and getting exposure and getting people to watch your list. So I think it really helps. All 3 of these companies have very carefully curated lists with personality and, you know, above all, a point of view. And certainly, Amy, listening to you about ABLAZE, and also Barbara about Fanbase, you know, you have very strong points of view in your publishing, and I think that is critical, because then people know, you know, what to look for. And it's not that you're handicapped or your hands are tied behind your back. You should have the freedom to publish what you are passionate about and things that come your way that excite you and hopefully will make money to support the business. But I do feel that if you look at our list, you can see where we're coming from and what types of books we publish. And I think that is sort of like the most critical step in terms of presenting your face to the outside world and having people pay attention to you. Is that a good answer?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it's a personal answer. That's the best
Yeah.
answer.
Distribution is really important too, of course. And I'm signed up with Ingram, so I feel like they have incredible systems and incredible penetration into the market, and that's really, really helping us.
Awesome. So Amy, ABLAZE, what is ABLAZE's opportunities and challenges as an independent publisher that you've found?
Difficult to say. We talked a little bit. I haven't been here long. I don't really take care of acquisition. I do a lot of grammar checking and stuff right now. But a lot of what we look for, because we are starting out, is what can kind of get us going. A lot of stuff is stuff that has connections to things that already exist. We've got the Minecraft property. We've got an upcoming manga that's, it has a TV show. So a lot of stuff is stuff that's easier to advertise, stuff that we can try to find ourselves in a zeitgeist or two and keep rolling with that. I think we're finding that the manga is doing quite well. So we're hoping to roll with that a little bit more. Manhwa, things that are published on Webtoon. We're starting to do print editions of those. That kind of gains popularity with audiences. So it's basically delving in, finding what works, what doesn't work. A lot of what we do is still very direct market based. We release floppies and stuff, and that's a hard to compete in market, because Marvel and DC are so huge in that market. It's hard to, people will come and be like, well, here's a pitch for a superhero story, and then it's just like, it's really hard to market a superhero story that's not Marvel and not DC. So it's doing this, convincing other people to do this, that sort of thing. Just trying to find our footing, figure out what's going to work.
And Barbara, what's the fan base angle? And so want to remind you, mentioned this in your intro. Fanbase isn't just a publisher; you're also a media platform. So talk about what your perspective on the challenges and opportunities as an indie publisher are.
Absolutely. So I think that we have always been maybe viewed as a strange animal, given that we do both of those tasks. We serve both of those purposes, but honestly, it has only worked in our favor because I think that we have built a community, given that we ourselves, I view it that everyone is a fan of something, and no matter what that fandom might be, we can all celebrate that positively and in a safe space together. So being able to provide that spotlight of others' fandom, of others' work, while also putting out stories that we are curating and publishing has been a blessing for us, and we're grateful to do so. So I see them only as pros, as positives for us. And in speaking to the challenges, we benefit from that freedom, that ability to tell the stories that we want to provide our creators with all of the opportunities that we can, and to allow them to tell ultimately the story that they hope and wish to tell. All of our stories are also creator owned, so we want to provide that freedom, that if they'd like to, and we of course partner with them in this, but if they want to see those stories adapted into other mediums, that they are given that freedom as well. So we really try to afford our creators as much freedom and ability as possible to succeed and to thrive. The challenges, I would say, is we very much see ourselves as the Bailey Brothers building and loan of the comic book industry. So we are the little engine that could. We self-distribute. We are not partnered with a distribution method. But Guy, as you had mentioned earlier, actually, one of the things that we've really benefited from, in addition to having just amazing titles and working with wonderful creators, is partnering just before the pandemic with both Comics Plus. We are also partnered with Hoopla. So through digital means, we are able to reach such a larger readership, and libraries, schools all across the world because of those partnerships, in addition to things like Kindle, Amazon, Google Plus, or Google Books, Google Reads, that sort of thing. And that really helps us to build partnerships in print with libraries as well. Once they find us through digital means, we can work with them on print as well. So, but I think the synergy between the publishing and the media elements of our company, in addition to partnering with just such wonderful entities like Library Pass, Comics Plus, Hoopla, and more, have really just fueled our ability to share these stories with as many readers as possible.
Awesome. So you've segued into the other question we were going to talk about, which is perfect, on the school and library side. And so in my mind, a big challenge is distribution in general. Or as an independent publisher, you guys are self-distributed, so in some ways an even bigger challenge, but possibly also advantages to that as well. Amy or Angus, what is your experience in dealing with schools and libraries, and where do they fit for you guys in terms of the value they bring to your operations?
Can I jump in first quickly? Is that okay? Thanks, Amy. So when I was at Disney, I was the director of school and library marketing. So I've been to many ALAs and ALA midwinters and TLAs and AASLs and all the acronyms. And so I would say actually a pretty strong core of our business is the institutional school library and public library market. It's very important to us. And my first April out with only a handful of books, I was at TLA and I was at ALA with my own booth. So it's, again, it's really important for me to reconnect with all the people I know and also meet all the new librarians who I have yet to meet. Because as I get older, people start retiring. I'm like, how dare you? You were on that committee that year and you can't leave the profession. Actually, I will say one thing I notice is that retired librarians tend to volunteer more than ever for literacy and librarian work that they wouldn't otherwise do when they have full-time jobs, which is pretty amazing. But I am very much connected to the library market in that way, and I like to see people in person as much as possible.
Amy, I know every now and then we'll hit a question that from the editorial side might not land in your court, so feel free to pass. But what are your connections, if any, to the library market with ABLAZE?
I have an immense personal respect for librarians and libraries and the library market, and very little professional experience. So that's one of them where I'm like, libraries are great. Buy some books. I would love for books to be in libraries. I love libraries.
That is a perfectly good answer.
I'm so about the whole talk. I've been nervous.
You've done fine. Don't worry about it.
But
So
yeah,
we've got a few questions from the audience, and a quick comment, not a question, but this one is actually this is a good example of one of those. It's for Angus. Best wishes to Red Comet. Your website looks amazing, and I've already added a few books to my library. So count this webinar as a success. You've made some sales.
Oh, can I just add that 101 Ways to Read a Book, this book back here behind me, ALA Graphics just did a poster featuring 9 of the cartoons, a read poster, because they have a read campaign and bookmarks as well. So they just launched that at AASL last week. So that's pretty exciting.
Cool. Awesome. So let's and so Angus, this one might or might not fit for you. Do you have any recommendations from your catalog, whether the titles you've previewed or anything else, particularly interesting yet important caveat, appropriate for high school? And I'll let you make your own definition for appropriate for high school. We'll start with Amy.
Most of our catalog, I think, is going to be high school-ish and above. Particularly a lot of the manga titles; those are a little easier to recommend. Again, something like Conan. There's also everybody's going to have personal opinions about what's appropriate for a high schooler, and I don't know if I'm super lenient, because a lot of our books I would be like, here, children. And I don't know that their parents would like that. But a lot of our manga titles, we've got particularly like the webtoon things. I remember one of the questions pertained to like, what do you recommend for kids that are into video games? A lot of our stuff that does quite well are action titles. We've got Get School, we've got Versus Fighting Story, we've got Terror Man. We've got a couple of other things. We've got like a probably more for a female audience, like Witch of Mine, which is like a dramatic like romance involving witches, but also that one has blood and death and tragedy. So just a lot of things. I would predominantly recommend those titles.
Definitely interesting for high school. Appropriate maybe will vary based on where you are in your community.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff where I'm like this one, and then I'm from the South, so like there's stuff that I read growing up, particularly in manga and other comic books, where I know that my mom probably would not appreciate it, but it was fine. So I don't know. My dad also gave me The Stand in 7th grade, so I don't know.
There you go. That right there is the definition of appropriateness varies family to family.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, Barbara?
I would say I would agree with Amy. I would say all of our titles, at least the ones that I spoke about today, are interesting and appropriate for high school. I would also underscore that all of the titles, save for Four Color Heroes, include study guides in the books. And so even with Nuclear Power, which is aged a little bit up, I think still older high school students would enjoy it. I think appropriate for world history and general history courses. Along with a guide of, how it can be utilized within the curriculum. Four Color Heroes, while it doesn't have a study guide, does have an appended essay by Dr. Drea Letamendi, who is a clinical psychologist, speaking about why the importance of focus on mental health for LGBTQIA plus youth is so important, and how it applies within the story and how it can be discussed with younger individuals. So again, just a wonderful story that is directly targeted to that age group, but also can be utilized either with educators, with family members to discuss it. So, but otherwise, I would say all of the above.
And Angus, I don't know if I know you said 0 to 12.
So technically I do 0 to 12. However, 101 Ways to Read a Book is sort of all ages. And then I do have a book coming next spring, which is on our website already, that I think reads up beautifully for high school students as much as middle grade. It's called Extinctopedia, and it is an oversized 64-page illustrated in a sort of 19th century naturalist notebook style of all the animals that have been extinct, are thought to be going extinct, and those that went extinct and were found again. So it's this huge catalog of animals with little stories about each of them. And we worked on it with the Smithsonian Institution, so we have that branding on it, which is really nice. And I think, well, as a reader myself, and having edited it very heavily many times, as one has to do in order to get Smithsonian name on it, I really learned a lot, and I feel that it will speak to older readers. And the other really wonderful thing about it is it takes a strong point of view and encourages readers to actually take action and suggests ways to get involved to protect the diversity of our planet.
Cool. So this one comes up a lot and is even a challenge for us as we work with our partners. This may not, well, Angus and Barbara definitely won't specifically be tied to your catalogs, but if you've got recommendations that you're aware of, feel free to jump in. Manga for children. So the challenge we've found is because of the differences in Japanese and American culture, we tend to always have to age manga up. So, if publisher X says, oh, this is great for teens, it often ends up being borderline or outright young adult for us according to our age guidelines. And for whatever reason, what's been licensed for US translation tends to start at shonen and go up, and not really, it's not like the Japanese don't have great manga for young readers. For whatever reason, very little of it makes it here. If you were making recommendations for either manga, actual translated from the Japanese or from Korean or from Chinese, or Western published manga influence, are any of you aware of any particular recommendations that you would suggest, whether specific titles or publishers who are working in those areas that you'd recommend?
Do not. I'll defer to Amy.
We've got Wakfu, which is a manga based on, I think, a cartoon. So we've got the one. Most of them are going to be teen. You were talking about just the cultural differences. Like, yeah, shonen is boy, like literally boys magazine, that when you get it here, it's like, oh well, all right. And because we got the question in the email, and I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I've got a few that are like about cats. I have a Cheese Sweet Home, and I think Fuku Fuku, those are about cats. They're pretty cute.
They're two of our most popular and very few for young readers.
Yeah, like I was going through my bookshelf trying to find them, and it is weirdly difficult. There are some things where I think, like, I was like, oh, Witch Hat Atelier, that is fine, but it's the reading level is higher.
Right.
So it's that balance of like, where is the content appropriate, and then the reading level. But yeah, I know that we've got Wakfu that's based on a cartoon that I believe is on Netflix. But yeah, that's a hard one.
It is. It's both. We've found a challenge and potentially an opportunity in the industry, particularly where a lot of manga, like I feel like every comics publisher is dabbling in manga to some degree these days.
Isn't Kodansha? Don't they have a really robust manga publishing program? I don't know how young they
Kodansha
go.
publishes the two Amy mentioned,
Right.
but even with
Right.
Kodansha, the stuff that like inarguably would be for younger readers,
You still have to
it's a
age it up.
very small
Yeah.
percentage. So we've seen it as both an opportunity for publishers to either go after those licenses that the bigger manga publishers aren't prioritizing, or sourcing original creation. Saturday AM is the closest to an original non-Japanese manga publisher, but even there, I think they've got like two that I would say fall into that Witch Hat Atelier category of age appropriate, but maybe reading level higher than younger readers. So that was almost a trick question. It's a challenging space for everybody, and librarians looking for that material, they tend to end up recommending Svetlana Chmakova's Middlebrook Elementary School from Yen Press. That tends to be one of the most popular series that get recommended. And even that falls into that, how young are you calling younger readers? So cat manga might be the best place to start. Can't go wrong with cats. All right, so we're going to wrap it up. Final question, and I'll start with Amy. We'll end with Angus. A personal recommendation, comic that you really enjoy, that's from someone other than your publisher. No other constraints.
I was looking through the shelves for that one too, because I was like, who counts as indie? And I had to like Google it. Who's small? I'm gonna go with Yin Press's Kowloon Generic Romance, which is a manga set in the walled city of Kowloon. A little more adult. I think there's some light nudity and sexual themes. But yeah, really good one. There's a mystery going on. Like, I'm reading it genuinely, the twists at the end of the volumes, I'm like, oh, and then you have to wait 3 months for another volume. So it's really good. Read it.
Awesome. Barbara?
I would say a series called White Ash. This is by Charlie Stickney, who is a Kickstarter phenom, I think is the best way to describe him, but he's also just a wonderfully kind and thoughtful human being. But he has created this series called White Ash, which has lots of spin-offs to it at this point. It was also published for a bit through Scout Comics, but it's a fantasy romance series with occasional horror twists and turns. If you can imagine Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Lord of the Rings, all set in rural Pennsylvania. But it's a really fun series. Like I said, lots of spin-offs, but a really fantastic one.
Awesome. Angus.
So a publisher that I really love to follow, and I love their publishing, is No Brow Flying Eye, from the UK, but they have distribution here too. And they are probably making a bagload of money right now. I hope so for them, because they're small and independent, on the Hilda series of books, which are spin-offs from the popular Netflix series. So I'm going to recommend those because I'm excited to read the ones that are coming out in the next few months.
Awesome. So part of this is recommendations for me. That's the real secret for asking that question. And that's the first time somebody named a publisher I was completely unfamiliar with. So that's cool. And I got to look them up. I did not know them. So
I will
that
send
brings
you
us-
info.
Awesome. Please do.
Yes,
No,
you
really.
need to know them.
So we're going to wrap it up. Thank you guys for participating in this. ABLAZE, Fanbase Press, Red Comet Press. Check them out on Comics Plus. Check them out broadly. Go to their websites and find out where you can get their physical books and get them on your shelves, because all three of them, as you got hints of here, publish some really great comics that should see wider circulation and visibility. We're excited to partner with them at Library Pass. And we thank them again for taking their time this afternoon. And we hope you guys enjoy the rest of the show. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you around.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Nice
you.
meeting everybody. Nice talking.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you, Guy. Thank you,
Yeah.
Amy, Barbara.